Hi, my name's Amy, and this is the audience for my speech.
I'm James Love, and I'm a senior here at Armour High School.
Hi, I'm Connor, and I'm a senior here at Armour High School.
My name is Maddie, and I'm also a senior at Armour High School.
Bernard Crow, Steve Parent, Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, Jason Sebring, Lino LaBianca, Rosemary LaBianca, and Barbara Hoyt. What do all these names have in common? All of these people are victims of the Charles Manson cult, the Manson family. Who are the people in the cult, you might ask? Charles Manson, he was the leader of the cult. Charles Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Bobby Busolil, Steve Grogan, Mary Brunner, Leslie Van Houten, Susan Atkins, and Linda Kasabian were the members of the Manson cult. Before we get into the actions of the cult, let's talk about Charles Manson and his early childhood and what led him to be the person that he is today. Charles Manson was born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1934. His mother was 16 years old and an alcoholic, and Charles Manson never knew his real father. He bounced around between boarding schools and foster homes at the age of 5 because his mother was convicted of armed robbery and was sentenced to a 5-year prison sentence. Manson displayed violent and manipulative behaviors as a child, and he would manipulate his classmates and hurt the kids he didn't like when he was in first grade. Manson's life to crime, his violent and manipulative behavior led to petty crimes as a child, and his first time in jail was in 1951. Beginning in 1956, Manson spent years in federal prison for various reasons, including forging government checks and other crimes including stealing cars, pimping younger prostitutes, and forgery. The psychology behind his crimes was his probation report said that Manson showed a marked degree of rejection, instability, and psychic trauma, and he was constantly striving for status and securing some kind of love. These symptoms were believed to have been rooted from his parentless life and traumatic childhood. So after Manson was released from prison in 1967, he decided to move to California to pursue music because he had learned to play the guitar in prison. His music was influenced by LSD, hippie culture, and the Beatles. So he went to LA to get a record deal, and he tried to get this record deal by impressing different artists. He failed to impress Neil Young and other bands like the Mamas and Papas. Then he was introduced to Dennis Wilson and the Beach Boys, who saw talent in him and offered him a record deal. Dennis Wilson let Manson and some of his groupies stay in Wilson's mansion with him in June of 1968. Manson's groupies believed that he was a guru with prophetic powers. Wilson eventually kicked them out because they were causing trouble. Then later, in 1969, Manson accused the Beach Boys of reworking one of his songs and putting it on their album 2020 and not giving him any credit for that. After this, Manson created the cult called The Family, and he hoped to bring about Armageddon through a race war, and he named this scenario Helter Skelter after the 1968 song by the Beatles. He believed that when African Americans rose up against white in an end-all race war, he and his family would be the only people left standing. And his cult consisted mainly of women, and he used LSD to influence their thinking. So the idea behind the cult crimes was that the family thought they could quicken their apocalyptic timeline by murdering celebrities and pinning it on African Americans to make more people notice it. This all began in August of 1969, when Manson had 4 of his most loyal followers, Charles Watson, Susan Atkins, Lisa Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel, go on a 2-day killing spree where 7 people were killed, 5 in one night, 2 in the other. The first night, the first casualty was Steve Parent, who was a caretaker at a neighboring property of the Tate house, and he was visiting the property, and Watson stopped him in the vehicle and shot him 4 times in the chest and stabbed him. So the first of the murders was at the Polanski Tate home. Sharon Tate and 3 of her friends came back from a dinner, to the home where Polanski and Tate shared, and Polanski was absent at the time. They were, the Polanski and Tate home was targeted because they were believed to have represented the rich showbiz elite, and Manson felt that they had rejected him. So August 9th, 1969, Watson entered the Tate home by cutting through the screen window of the house and opened the front door for Atkins and Krenwinkel. Kasabian was in the driveway on lookout. Tate and Sebring were then tied together by their necks. Folger was taken to a nearby bedroom, and Frykowski was bound with a towel. So Sharon Tate was an actress, and she was also pregnant at the time. She was stabbed 16 times, which killed her and her unborn child. Sebring was shot and stabbed 7 times. Frykowski escaped the towel that he was bound with, but then he was caught by Atkins and struck in the head with a gun, and then shot multiple times. Folger fled, but was caught on the lawn by Krenwinkel and Watson and was stabbed 28 times. Frykowski was still alive after these things happened to him, so he was crawling on the lawn, but then was caught by Watson and was stabbed 51 times. So the following night, August 10th, they went on another killing spree. This time Manson came along with them. So Manson and 6 of his members committed the second night of murders. They went to a house in a neighborhood that they had gone to a party to the year prior, and the house belonged to Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, who owned the wholesale grocery company, so they were very wealthy. When they got there, they tied the couple up with a lamp cord and covered their heads with pillowcases. Manson told the couple that they weren't going to be harmed and that they were being robbed, so the Manson family collected the cash in the house, and then they returned the wife, Rosemary, to her room. Then the family left and then returned. This time, Manson had given them orders to murder the family. So Watson stabbed Lino, the husband, 26 times, carved war into his stomach, and left a knife in his throat. And then they went to the bedroom, and Rosemary was swinging the lamp at them with the cord attached to it that had been around her neck, and then she was stabbed 41 times. After this, the cult wrote "Death to Pigs" and "Rise" on the walls and Lino's blood on the walls, and then they also wrote "Helter Skelter" and Lino's blood on the refrigerator door. So the investigation for these murders, Tate's housekeeper found the bodies from the first night's murders, and she called LAPD. And then Rosemary LaBianca's son from her first marriage found their bodies when she went to their house and called the cops there too. LAPD decided that the 2 murders were not connected at first, and they thought that the murder of Sharon Tate was related to a drug transaction. The Manson family resided at Death Valley Ranches, and then one of the members' girlfriends was arrested along with the rest of the family for stolen vehicles that were found on the property when police investigated there. She told the LaBianca murder detectives that Atkins was involved in the murders, and then when Atkins was in prison, she told her bunkmates in prison that she was also involved in the murders, which sparked the LAPD to investigate further into the case. So the LAPD found physical evidence against Watson and Krenwinkel at the Tate murder and connected it to them, and then they issued a warrant for the arrest of Watson, Krenwinkel, and Kasabian, and for their involvement in the Tate and LaBianca murders. No warrant for Atkins or Manson's arrest was put out because they were already in custody for unrelated crimes at Death Valley. The trial for the murders was June 15th, 1970. The Tate-LaBianca trial against Manson, Watkins, Atkins, and Krenwinkel was for 7 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy, and Van Houten was on trial for 2 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy. Kasabian testified for the prosecution in exchange for immunity, and Barbara Hoyt was also a prosecution witness because she was lured in by one of the members of the Manson cult to Hawaii and given lethal doses of LSD, but was taken to the hospital in time, so she survived. Van Houten's attorney, Ronald Hughes, refused to let his client, Leslie Van Houten, testify in the court because he said he refused to push a client out the window because a lot of the Manson family members were incriminating themselves when they testified. And so after that, he didn't show up in court, and after the trial ended, his body was found, and his death was suspected to be a hit ordered by the Manson family. The verdict of the trial took a week for the jury to deliberate, and all the members of the Manson cult were found guilty on all their charges of both murder and conspiracy. So, where are the members of the cult now? Leslie Van Houten is in the California Institution for Women in Frontera, California, and has been denied parole 21 times. Charles Tex Watson is serving a life sentence in Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, California. Patricia Krenwinkel is serving a life sentence in California Institution for Women in Chino, California, and has been denied parole 14 times. Susan Atkins was serving her life sentence in the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California, until she died at age 61 in 2009. Linda Kasabian was granted immunity for being a key witness in the trial and left California shortly after. And Charles Manson was serving his life sentence in California Corcoran's State Prison, where he was denied parole 12 times. January 1st, 2017, he was taken to the hospital for gastrointestinal bleeding and returned to prison January 6th. November 15th, 2017, he was taken back to the hospital and died November 17th from cardiac arrest from respiratory failure and colon cancer at the age of 83.